You have to choose to love yourself, even if it doesn't make sense. It's not natural, it's intentional.
Have you ever had to make that choice?
Huh?
Have you ever thought that it seems way easier to give advice to others than to ourselves? Why do you think that is? Well, apart from the fact that we need to actually do what we say, we have to admit that we're less emotional to the problems of others than to ourselves. This is called the Solomon Paradox. The Solomon Paradox is a phenomenon where we can appear wiser when we offer guidance to somebody. The name came from King Solomon, who was the wisest king in the Bible that gives advice to people from different nations. And yet, he ended up corrupt and turned against God due to his 700 wives and 300 concubines.
You what?
Anyways, the paradox points out that our brain works more rationally when we reason about other people's problem than with our own. And while it may sound like weakness, it kinda says a lot about humans being a social creature, where we can help each other to make big decisions. Let's go back to that scene.
How are you supposed to like the part of yourself that just makes you worse than everyone else?
'Cause it exists. It's a part of you that's real, and the only you that you should care about is the real you.
At this moment, Zooble is thinking about Gangle's problem instead of their own. Gangle is currently struggling with splitting, or black and white thinking, which made her believe that she is a bad person due to her ugly side of her personality. She deeply thinks that if there's a bad part in herself, it pollutes the rest of herself into a person who's worse than everyone else, which was gently disproven by Zooble. This is the key reason why this paradox happens. No matter how close our relationship to a person, there's always an emotional distance. Now I want you to remember these two words because we're gonna use it many times in this video. Although we see the same things, hear the same words, experience the same events, and yet, we don't feel the exact same emotion, even if both people believe so. But that's what makes us think more clearly. We tend to be much more rational towards feelings that aren't ours. It's not our problem in the first place after all. And unless we're quite close with that person, we're generally not emotionally attached to their issues. Despite the closeness between the two, Zooble is still the observer of Gangle's problem. And since Zooble can see the issue quite clearly, they advised her to no longer continue it. But when Gangle flipped the script, Zooble was immediately speechless and realized how vague their advice was. It's not just forcing them to reflect on what they said, but also accepting the fact that they don't have a real solution either. Loving yourself is more of a goal than an action, the destination of where we want our mental state to be. It's not an abstract nonsense thing that needs to be constantly done, but rather the fruit of how kind we treat ourselves throughout our lives. And thus, while Zooble might not be struggling with black and white thinking like Gangle, they do have the same struggle to accept themselves as a whole. So we know that we can give advice to others way more easily than to ourselves. And the main thing that causes this is emotional distance. So how can we fix it? Well, the gap is both an advantage and a weakness that you have to acknowledge. And when you do, it could be a powerful tool to craft a better advice to others than to ourselves. To others, emotional distance enables us to be wiser and give rational solutions, but that's also due to the fact we don't really feel what they have felt. If you just give your raw advice as is without fitting to their need, there's a pretty high chance that they can't receive your advice. Not because they don't want to, but because it's not applicable for them. So we need to bridge that gap. How? By actually getting close to them. Ask genuine, open-ended questions so that you know how they actually feel. This is not the time for you to judge and cook up some words to counter them. This is the time for you to listen. Listen to what they have to say in their current situation and what actually happens. You should leave your assumptions at the door, try to understand their struggles, and tune into what weighs their hearts as if you're in their shoes. If they decided to trust you, you might as well protect that trust to the best of your ability. You should prioritize listening over advising in the first place because without that step, your advice will immediately fall short. We can see this example from the dialogue between Kinger and Regda, where Kinger did explain to Regda about the truth of how human connection works.
The way I see it, relationships are two-sided.
But no matter how good that quote is, it didn't help Regda in her current state. She wasn't in a mental condition that was able to learn a lesson. So Kinger decided not to give any more advice, but he chose to be emotionally open with genuine empathy.
And I don't want people to hate me.
Do you hate yourself? I hated myself. I couldn't help but hate myself for the things I thought I was responsible for.
From this short scene alone, Kinger did two things that made his response different from Zooble. First, he reframes Ragata's statement, and this is a very powerful move. When Ragata said,
I want people to hate me.
Kinger could have just simply said,
Don't listen to what they said, you're better than them. What matters is what you love yourself regardless of what people think.
but instead, he gently shifts Ragata's focus to what she can control. Clearly, this is a very sensitive and intrusive question, and it's only natural that Ragata refuses to answer. So Kinger used this opportunity for self-disclosure, where he put himself in a relatable, vulnerable position to authentically gain Ragata's trust. It's only fair that once they open up to you, you should do the same as well. If you had a similar struggle but were lucky enough to be able to overcome it, that might be the very thing you need to share with them, because that's 10 times more valuable than generic advice they could find online. And if you cannot relate to their struggles, it's okay to admit that you don't know what to say to them. It's better to say that instead of giving advice that you won't do it yourself. Now, am I saying that Zooble and Gangle's moment had way less empathy than Kinger? Of course not. While Zooble's quote might fall short in that moment, the scene ends with a somewhat bittersweet resolution. Gangle seemed to drag Zooble down for a second, but then she grabs Zooble's hand to break the silence. That's a solid proof of trust, the very foundation for bridging emotional gaps.
Whatever happens, I've got your back if you've got mine.
Yeah.
Still, if the person you've tried to talk to has chosen not to open up to you, then perhaps it's not a good time to advise them of anything. Besides, trying to forcefully prying them open could eventually correct them in a way you wouldn't want to. Besides using the Solomon paradox to give better advice to others, you could also do the same to yourself with a slightly different approach. Now, giving yourself advice might sound a little bit weird and ineffective. Why would I want to do that? I could just Google up an advice for less than 10 seconds from a person that's way wiser than me. But let me tell you two things. You know yourself way better than anyone else in the world. So what comes out from your mouth will most likely be 10 times more relatable than from some internet strangers like me. And second of all, you most likely also already know the answer. You know exactly how to be productive, how to kick off your laziness and actually do your work. You watch thousands of self-help videos. You probably know well how to get healthy and get your life together. You know the answer. You just can't put yourself to do it, or even say to yourself that you're gonna do it. These two advantages are the main reason why you should give advice to yourself. But you need to clear your biases first and tell it as if you're giving advice to others. But how? You do the opposite. When you give advice to others, there's a great amount of emotional distance, but to yourself, there's none of that. So you need to separate yourself for a moment. You need to temporarily treat yourself as a different person to do this, which can be tricky at first. There are several practical ways, like talking to yourself in a third person or talking to your reflection in the mirror. You can also separate yourself with time, because you're not the same person you were yesterday nor tomorrow. You can write a conversation with the imagined wiser older version of yourself, or just simply make a video for yourself. And yes, the video you're watching right now is one of my ways to use this paradox as well. While it's true that I made this video for you guys, this video will also be watched by my future self. I'm a human too after all, and my emotions are constantly changing. The issues I have tomorrow might not be the same as the ones I have today. The person you were in the past or the person you'll be in the future can give better advice for your present self. That's how crazy this paradox is. This whole concept of being able to be wiser to others than to ourselves isn't a weakness, but something to be aware of. We can't really change how our mind is wired, but we can use this to be wiser to ourselves and to be more compassionate to others. When talking to friends, we can bridge that gap by gaining trust. Be vulnerable, be honest to how you feel, but at the same time, be open to what they feel. And when we talk to ourselves, do the opposite. We need to temporarily chop that emotional bridge. Divide your current ego by telling yourself in third person, or mentally call the wiser 80-year-old version of you, or maybe use the advice that you have given to others as your own. I know that this topic is an incredibly abstract concept that could be quite difficult to be understood. It's certainly easier said than done, and this video could only help you so much in your journey. In fact, this video couldn't help you at all if you do absolutely nothing. So let's help each other in the comments. What's one of the most memorable pieces of advice that you've received from yourself? Or what's the most genuine empathetic advice that you have given to someone else? Let's try our best together to do what we teach and to practice what we preach.